So secure attachment is not the same as someone's willingness to commit. And the thing is that people get stuck in unhealthy relationships and even really long-term marriages because they don't understand that the commitment is not the ultimate goal. So I want to unpack this so that you have a clear idea of what you should be looking for, what are really red flags for avoidant people that will carry that avoidance into a committed relationship like a marriage, and what you can do about it. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm Ketra Thompson. And what I do is I help my clients go back on a subconscious level so they can reframe all of that old subconscious programming that's driving their unwanted behavior. And I couple that with relationship and attachment style coaching for implementation so they get the best, longest lasting results that really become a way of being permanently for them. Because our subconscious mind is driving over 95% of everything we think, feel, and do. So it's an important process to get to the heart of that. So if you'd like to learn more, you can check out the link in the description below, and you can set up a completely complimentary consultation call where you and I can chat and we can get to the heart of what's going on with you, and I can make my best recommendation. So first, let's talk a little bit about what does real secure attachment look like. And I want you to keep in mind that all attachment styles are kind of on a sliding scale, and they can be exacerbated by being with a certain type of partner, made worse or better. And so secure attachment is really when people feel safe being close. They move toward each other in connection. They're comfortable expressing their emotions. They're able to really trust other people, and they can handle conflict well. They stay emotionally balanced, and they know they're worthy of love, even when things are going wrong. So the key traits of secure attachment are really about trust and reliability. It's where you believe that people will support you and they will be there for you when needed, and you allow them to. It's not just about you being there for other people. It's allowing those other people in. It's also about healthy intimacy. It's where you're comfortable being close and saying how you feel, really communicating vulnerably. It's also about emotional regulation. It's where you stay calm under stress, you recover fairly quickly from arguments or ups and downs in a relationship, where you know how to actually repair what happens when you have a disagreement. You don't just sweep it under the rug and keep going. Secure attachment also includes balanced interdependence. So that's where you can lean on others, and you can stand on your own, and you can let others help you, and you're willing to help others. When you just have one side of that, where you're just helping the other people and you aren't letting them help you, or you aren't believing that they will or that you can count on them, that is not balanced. And so secure attachment means that you feel safe and that you can trust other people and you can stay steady in your relationships, even when challenges come up. So this comes from healthy dynamics growing up, or very specific work that you do on yourself with specific help to rewire that subconscious programming that's driving behaviors. So it can be changed, but it's primarily coming from the conditioning you got as a child. If you're operating insecure or insecure, both of those programming start really early. So let's talk about what we mistake for secure attachment, especially when it comes to someone with a dismissive avoidant attachment style. So it might look like it's secure, but it really isn't. And that means that their independence is mistaken for confidence. So dismissive avoidants, they often prioritize just extreme self-reliance, and they kind of appear like they're unshakable. And people see this as self-confidence, but beneath that surface, that independence is a defensive strategy. It's a strategy to avoid closeness, and it's not about having emotional strength that's genuine. It's actually just the opposite of that. A lot of the times they really come across as low maintenance, and people interpret that as emotional stability, but it's not. They don't demand daily check-ins. They're not requiring some kind of reassurance. They might not need to be texting every day. And all of this on the surface looks like it might be emotionally healthy, But this distance is a mask, and it's masking the discomfort with intimacy that they have. They aren't sharing what is going on in their world or their needs. They pull away to do that. So they're not genuinely secure when they're doing this. It actually comes from that insecure part of them. And they really seem to be calm under pressure, like they don't have any needs at all, which is partly because they don't even realize they have needs. And the ones they might realize, they aren't willing to express them because they don't believe other people can be there for them, or they have this deep belief subconsciously that they don't want to be a burden. And so when stress hits, they shut down or they withdraw quietly. And this can come across as maybe emotional resilience. But the truth is, it's suppression. It's not regulation. And their calmness, it often conceals that anxiety and the discomfort that they have with vulnerability. Now, they can kind of also be dismissive of other people's needs. And sometimes that can look like healthy boundaries, but in reality, it's just their inability to be interdependent. They don't know how to handle themselves in their own life, in their own stress. How the hell are they supposed to manage someone else's stresses? And so because they aren't sharing any of the load of what they're carrying, they have no capacity to carry anything of anyone else's either. Even though no one should be expecting one person to carry everything, but there should be an interdependence. And so dismissive avoidance really downplay and ignore emotional needs. And that can look like strong boundaries, but in reality, it's emotional distancing. It's avoiding connection rather than setting intentional connection boundaries and respecting their own limits and the limits of someone else through communication. So why does this matter? It really matters if you don't want to be trapped in something that is emotionally neglectful for the rest of your life. These behaviors might mimic secure traits, but they aren't rooted in emotional safety or mutual trust. So true secure attachment involves genuine closeness, balanced with interdependence, where there's a comfort with intimacy, where you're navigating conflicts together, even when your emotions run high. So let's just talk for a minute about why custom hypnotherapy is so helpful for reframing this, even if you are the one that is not necessarily dismissive, but you've gotten sucked into these relationships for a reason, and you've misread these signs for a reason. And so hypnosis and attachment style relationship coaching, which is what I do, combined is what brings this powerful process into a place that can actually create lasting change in your life, creating a more secure attachment style. And it's because this process accesses the subconscious mind. So hypnotherapy, it taps into the subconscious in a way that we don't have access otherwise, where these core beliefs and these emotional patterns live, where they're driving your behavior. And that way, once we're in there, we can identify what isn't working and rewrite those old attachment scripts. We can get to the heart of those beliefs of feeling like I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, and even those beliefs of I must avoid intimacy, I have to keep my distance, I have to self-protect. And so we can get to the root of that. And we can also release those past emotional wounds because those play into this. And so that guided custom hypnotherapy process can uncover and release buried traumas, abandonment wounds, emotional neglect, just really creating space for a new way of being, a new way of showing up in this world. So it installs the new beliefs, the new neural pathways, allowing for positive beliefs like I am worthy, I can trust and be trusted. It gets right in there where we need to get that reframing so you can have a new way of looking at life and yourself. And the process I do really allows you to strengthen your emotional regulation abilities. So this allows you to reduce that anxiety and reduce any avoidant reactivity that you might have. And it allows your nervous system to respond to stress with calm and clarity instead of fight or flight, which has probably been your go-to for a long time, regardless of what kind of insecure attachment style you have. And all of this really reinforces that your attachment wounds are deep. They are deeply embedded in your subconscious mind. And so that's where we have to go to reframe them. So the hypnotherapy process actually gives you that deep lasting shift, rewiring the subconscious programming and healing those old attachment wounds, building that emotional balance and resilience so that you can trust yourself And you can move into secure attachment as you build something authentic and real with someone that is actually moving in that direction too, toward real connection and security, which means interdependence. Now, I experienced firsthand how this looks, and there's so many different versions of avoidance. And so it can get confusing trying to determine whether someone's avoidant. But oftentimes a people pleaser is also quite avoidant. They don't share what they want. They don't share what they need. They say yes to everything, and they're avoiding sharing their own desires. And so the other person ends up being blindsided when one day, out of nowhere, they pull the rug out, they're bitter, they're angry, they act out, they have an affair, they leave, or whatever, because they haven't been expressing their own needs and opinions. And that one can be hard because it really does feel like a blindsided thing. And then you've got really the type of distance making that happens with someone who has narcissistic traits. They're constantly picking fights over nothing. They're creating conflict, and they're creating distance because they don't want to get vulnerable and close, and they only want to use you for their benefit. And so there's a lot of manipulation in those scenarios, but it's also very avoidant. And then you've got the dismissive avoidant type that is often very thoughtful, probably some people-pleasing tendencies, but they tend to fault find. They look for things that are wrong in their partner so they can make excuses in their own mind about why they shouldn't go all in with them or commit. And what it does is creates this distance of them holding back and not going all in because they aren't quite sure how to do that. And the thing is that the dismissive avoidant is probably the trickiest of all because in most cases, those other distance-making behaviors are coupled with some other stuff. But the dismissive avoidant is truly usually kind and good and respectable and someone you might even admire and you look up to them in some ways. But their inability to connect and their narrative of fault finding in their mind can be a real problem as you move forward into a committed relationship and into a marriage because they may not ever go all in with those things. They may take on the responsibilities of what they think is their job and their responsibility to do, but they are so detached from their own feelings that they don't know how to articulate them to themselves or another person. And so you end up feeling lonely. You end up feeling like nothing ever gets quite resolved. There's a bit of a guessing game about whether or not you actually are important to them or not. You're kind of trying to figure that out on your own. There's not a lot of reassurance. And there seems to be a cluelessness or an obliviousness to this process with them. And so even though initially those relationships can feel very like emotionally charged because they, in the first at least 5 months, they're not really holding back because there's no fear of commitment. But once that commitment happens, and especially into a marriage, that may not shift. And that's the risk you're running. And so you want to make sure that this person actually can move toward you, can resolve conflict, can hear what you're saying, can validate what you're saying, can share their own feelings, can share their own fears, and can ask for help when needed, can let you in to them, to their life, to their needs. And so these are all things you want to test for before you make that commitment. And the more you are regulated within yourself, the more your nervous system has calmed down and you're not acting out of subconscious triggers, the easier it's going to be for you to calmly, clearly make those observations, gather that information. And if it doesn't work, that's going to help you leave because it's the part of you that so badly wants to be chosen and loved to prove to yourself you are worthy that ends up staying and trying to force something that isn't going to happen. And it's not that it's you're not the reason it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because this is how that person is wired. And until they make intentional efforts to rewire that subconscious programming and step into their vulnerability, they're not going to make those changes. So again, if you would like some help rewiring that subconscious mind and changing your attachment style patterns, set up that consultation call in the link below. I'd love to chat with you. And until next time, I hope you curate a life by your own design.